I know that in 2005 you led the global study tour, where together with your first year students of the Executive MBA program of New York Stern School of Business, you went to Russia. You went there for an immersive 1 week program where you met with leaders of the industry, financial institutions, and government organizations. As part of the program, you require students to submit a briefing book about Russia, currency savings, foreign investments, and natural resources, as well as politics. Can you please talk about your findings back then and maybe reflect a bit on how it has changed? Because we can see a lot of Russia playing more of a global player context as a bully in one way or another, like especially with the way it treats opposition nowadays, with Navalny being in Germany, healing, and all those things. So we didn't have that in 2005. So how did it change?
Wow. Thank you for bringing up what for me is a very happy memory. Taking those 27 very bright and curious people to Moscow and to St. Petersburg was a big, was a wonderful experience for me, and I hope for them. There are many things one can say to contrast, Russia in 2005 versus today. Many different things. And it's changed not only from those 2 points, but along the way. I lived in Moscow from 2010 to 2013, and again, it was different. But I'll try to offer a few ideas. I honestly don't remember what was in the briefing book, but I'll talk about my own impressions. In 2005, you had a Russia that was growing, becoming more serious about business. That was right on the cusp of years of record levels of IPOs of Russian companies, a lot of wealth creation, a lot of international expansion, including by Russia's wealthy, branching out, buying properties, getting into places like the UK and others and beginning that. So the diaspora was forming then. Russia had at the time a reasonable geopolitical position. There were not quite the levels of conflicts that have emerged over these years. And I would also add that oil was a bit higher in those days. It wasn't at 100, but it was certainly not at 40. It was probably, I'm guessing, somewhere in the 60s then. So there was more to work with. Russia was in a stronger position. If we fast forward to today, I think it's a very different Russia, and for a lot of different reasons. Firstly, it's a much less internationally oriented country in business and financial terms. Those days there were many IPOs. Now there are none really abroad. So that changed dramatically. Access to international capital markets because of sanctions has gone away. And then from that, I think Russia has become a bit, and again, it's very hard to characterize a country. I'm talking more about the feeling you have spending time there and the feeling that you get from the leadership of Russia. It's become a more Russian country. There's more focus inward on Russian history, Russian nostalgia, Russia's position in the world. Russia, which by a lot of accounts, does punch beyond its weight in geopolitical terms. The Middle East is a good example, and for that I give it credit. It's managed to play a big role in certain parts of the world. The trade-off has been an economic trade-off, and so I think that what one might have hoped in those years to see developed and grown, and it did continue. When I lived in Moscow, there was a lot of talk of Russia, of Moscow becoming a global financial center, and I participated in some discussions with government and business people about that. To create Moscow as a financial center, to open up capital markets, to put in place the framework and the infrastructure to do business on a global scale. And unfortunately, for a lot of different reasons. And I would prefer, it's a country I hold very dear, and so I would not want to get into a discussion necessarily about Navalny. That's very unfortunate. Um, and but over the course of these years, while Russia has punched above its weight geopolitically, in PR terms, it's gotten into some problems. Beginning with Ukraine, um, some of the issues around the U.S. and the U.S. election process. More recently with Navalny, with some of the issues with the UK. And so I think Russia has become more isolated, certainly politically, but I think also economically, and I think that that's unfortunate, and it's unfortunate mostly for young Russians who are trying to, build their careers and get into, good, productive areas and industries. At the same time, the country has also become much more state-owned. If you look at the industrial base, you look at the corporate. So all of these trends, being more closed in, being more state-owned overall, have not led to a thriving kind of innovative economy. And so, I think Russia has tried over the years to do things like, just in 2005 was just before they created Skolkovo, where I had lectured at a certain point, and I knew the folks very well there, and there was so much promise, both Skolkovo as a learning center and as an incubator for for early stage companies. So there was this kind of Silicon Valley, and unfortunately, it just didn't kind of get to where it needs to be for a lot of reasons. And so my hope for Russia is, it's been the same hope for many years, is that, there can be a push to structurally change the economy, to diversify both the ownership and the sectoral imbalances in the economy, and on resources. I'm not saying anything that anybody listening is not familiar with. So there's nothing new in what I'm saying. But it does, since you posed the question, raise a tremendous contrast from what I remember in 2005 and then the years following that. And so I would hope there's a way back. I'm not sure that there is anytime soon, and that's unfortunate.